It's small, it's the length of a runway, roughly, and it doesn't last very long. So it's something that can happen so quickly that many accidents have occurred because nobody knew it was there.
The storm arrived at the foot of runway 17 left virtually unannounced. But once there, it attracted a lot of attention. Pilots on the ground as well as trained weather observers saw the worsening storm. But they all saw it too late to warn the crew of Delta 191. The storm did show up on a radar screen at the Fort Worth Air Traffic Control Center. But at the time of the crash, the meteorologist on duty was in the cafeteria on a meal break.
If the flight crew had had any idea that there would be a severe event in front of them, they would have missed the approach.
Investigators conclude that the Delta crash was caused by the pilot's decision to continue their approach into the storm. A decision that was made because the crew wasn't warned about the hazard. In 1985, there were basic systems at airports that could detect dangerous winds, but they could not reliably detect a microburst.
On the ground, there were systems called low-level wind shear alerting systems that primarily looked for differences of wind speed around the airport and on the airport. Unfortunately, these sensors tended to be spaced so far apart that a microburst could actually exist in between them and escape detection, or at least detection in time to warn a pilot of the threat.
But a microburst detection system to overcome this problem had been developed. It was being tested in Denver and working very well.
What we found out is that Doppler radar, which is on the ground, is incredibly effective in detecting microbursts. In fact, it can detect about 98% of a microburst.
Conventional radar uses radio waves to measure precipitation inside a storm. Doppler also sends out radio waves, but by measuring the frequency of returning waves, Doppler can also calculate the movement of the winds inside a storm.
And if you look for the Doppler radar, you see a part of it that's going away from the radar and a part that's coming towards the radar. And if it's small, it's absolutely a microburst. It can be nothing else. So it has what we call an unambiguous signature of a microburst, which means we got it.
Since Doppler radar could see a microburst, controllers could use it to warn crews of their presence. The Denver research resulted in an important new system at airports: Terminal Doppler Weather Radar. When the system detects dangerous conditions, it relays a warning to air traffic controllers, who can then alert pilots.
Flight 236, microburst alert.
50 knot lock. 1 mile final. Say intentions.
After the crash of Delta 191, the Federal Aviation Authority, the FAA, hurried to install terminal Doppler weather radar at high-risk airports. Dallas-Fort Worth was one of the first. The domes containing the specialized radar are now a common fixture at major airports around the world. But radar on the ground can't get the warning to the pilots fast enough.
We also have an issue with ground-based systems in that it takes time to communicate the threat to the crew. The system has to detect it on the ground. It would typically go to a control position in the control tower and be relayed by voice to the pilot, which can introduce a delay of 10, 15, 20 seconds, which could be very critical.
Planes also needed on-board microburst detection. A team from NASA began developing such a system by flying into the most dangerous microbursts they could find.
Here we go. Take it.
By risking their own lives, they would eventually save thousands of others. Delta Airlines Flight 191 is the latest in a string of crashes attributed to a microburst. Since 1964, microbursts were shown to be the cause of 26 accidents, claiming more than 500 lives. The public is unnerved. Politicians are demanding answers. The killer has to be stopped.
the body count is building, and this particular crash tipped the scales as far as the federal government was concerned.
The crash of Delta 191 showed that seconds count when planes encounter a microburst.
You're going to lose it all of a sudden. There it is.
Increasing alert times
Push it up. Way
could
up.
save more lives, especially if a microburst detector was mounted right on the plane.
If you can provide the airplane with 10, 15, 20 seconds of advance warning, pilots push the throttles up, they build airspeed, they build altitude, they build energy. It's like money in the bank. By the time they get to the microburst during a recovery, they can survive.
Aviation experts had to find a way to give all pilots those critical 20 seconds. To develop that technology, they would embark on a high-risk, unprecedented research project. They would fly a 737 into the most severe microbursts they could find.
We did a very careful risk analysis of all the possible dangers that could occur. And initially, the first reaction was, you want to do what with an airplane? You want to fly it through a microburst?
In the summer of 1991, NASA modified a Boeing